Om Jnanatimidandhasya Jnanam Jana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
Supreme Personality of Godhead, to bow down to his parents, to Brahmins, to give gifts to Brahmins. Sometimes it's asked, why was Krishna offering respect to demigods? Because they're respectable persons. Acting as an ideal householder, he also offered respect to them. He also offered respect to the king. You'll find, even in countries where they have kings, especially I can think of Nepal and Thailand, and to a lesser respect Malaysia, everyone will have a picture of the king in their house. And especially in Thailand, they'll give a lot of respect, because the king is considered a representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As Prabhupada notes in his Bhagavad Gita purport, that superiors are not to be even offered even a verbal fight. That if you may not agree with something a superior says, but you don't offer him even verbally a fight, what to speak of a physical fight. They are not to be criticized or spoken of in a familiar way, even in the third person. That means if you're speaking, for instance, about your guru, and he's not there, or someone who's a respectable person, he's not to be criticized or spoken of familiarly, even if he's absent. That means we should also always refer, if someone is not there, we can speak to him of so-and-so Prabhu, not giving some respect. Now, about making jokes, one should not also make jokes about someone in superior position, as generally. A superior, he can make an affectionate or even a cutting joke about or to a junior, but not vice versa. Especially when one's speaking to a devotee who's on a lower position than the person you're speaking about, then you should always refer to him as Maharaj or Prabhu, when speaking in the third person. Superiors are to be worshipped, heard from, to take instruction from, learn from, and served. One may also offer gifts to them. Superiors, sometimes they offer gifts also to juniors. So it's an affectionate relationship. By humility, by service attitude, by respectful behavior, one endears himself to the superior. And then he becomes very pleased to give instruction and mercy. This is described in Bhagavad Gita 4:34 purport. How the attitude of the disciple endears himself to the Guru, and thus he becomes very pleased to reveal all the truths of spiritual knowledge. Without giving gifts, it's generally thought of that one should give a gift to, just like dakshina, to a guru or a brahmin, but they may also give, just like Bhakti Saraswati Thakur, he gave one bundi, one kind of shirt, to Prabhupada's son. And Prabhupada, he sometimes used to give people would give him so many clothes, he'd distribute them to his disciples. When the first copy of Teachings of Lord Chaitanya came off the press, the first copy was brought to Prabhupada. He only had one copy. He gave to one disciple who had run away and come back. He just gave it to him he just looked at it and he gave that book to that disciple, and that disciple was never seen again. Now, that doesn't mean that there isn't friendliness in the relationship. There may be friendliness, but within certain parameters. The superiors, they not only receive respect, not that there can't be friendliness, within parameters. Actually, Vaishnava exchanges, they're exchanges of love, but there are parameters also. So superior's obligations is not a one-way street, that he simply accepts service and respect from others. It's like the Guru, he's served by the disciples, but he has to give something back, such as the opportunity to serve. He should speak some valuable knowledge so that they can benefit. According to the development of relationship and mutual commitment to each other, if the relationship is close, the superior, he may take charge of that junior, just like the temple president takes charge of the temple devotees, or the guru takes charge of the disciple, spiritually and materially also. It means the guru sees the disciple he sees that he's properly looking after himself, or if he's sick, he should have some concern. Who's looking after him? Has he been to see a doctor? All these things. Encourages and chastises. He may tolerate, he may oversee some of his faults, not knowing that he can't immediately become perfect in everything. So by his kind behavior, he endears himself to the person who is serving him. Now, behavior of people in a respectable position is important for all of us, because we're all sadhus, we're representing Srila Prabhupada, we're representing this society for Krishna consciousness. So, in Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is said, Dharma sthapan hetu sadhu bhavaha. Dharma is established in society by the behavior of devotees. So, one who's in a respectable position, by his behavior, he maintains the prestige of the society, of his ashram. Say he's in sannyas ashram. He maintains the prestige of his position. He's expected to behave in a very proper manner. One reason is to maintain the faith of juniors. Those who are in a junior position, they're expected to respect seniors so they can learn from them, and this will make the Vaishnava society very nice. So that faith has to be maintained by the proper behavior of those in a senior position. Even if occasionally someone in a senior position does something which isn't proper or correct, that should be overlooked, according to Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. He says that even if someone who's a sadhu, even if he does something which is very bad, because even by mistake or some slip, he may do something even very bad, not to speak of a minor fault, then if he's fixed that his life, my commitment, is to Krishna and Krishna consciousness, then even he may have some slip, that is to be overlooked. Api chet sudaracharo bhajate mam ananya bhak sadhureva samantavya. He should still be considered a sadhu. And if someone has some minor faults, sadhu has some minor faults, they should be overlooked altogether. Just like the spots on the moon shines very brightly and is very beautiful. But so the overall effect of the moon is something very pleasing and beneficial. So if someone simply sees the spots, then his attitude is not correct. Of course, in the Vaishnava society, senior always endeavors to act as a perfect representative of Srila Prabhupada. He doesn't take a license for wrong behavior, but he always endeavors to act as a perfect representative of Srila Prabhupada by his behavior and his activities and by his instructions. And he trains others also to act in a very proper way. Now, one thing is that you were saying that in the course of time, someone who is junior to another, in the course of time, their relationship, when someone first comes, He learns everything from senior devotees. But after some time, when he also becomes experienced, then his relationship with those senior devotees may not be so much of awe and respect. The relationship may flatten out, so to speak. But the guru-disciple relationship is never so. Even if the disciple in some ways surpasses the guru, which he may do, in preaching, in strict following of sadhana, in spiritual advancement, in some ways he may be a better cook, he may be a better kirtan leader, so many things. But the disciple always maintains an attitude of humble service and submission and subordination to the Guru. As in deity worship, Prabhupada warns in one purport in Chaitanya Charitamrita, one should not become over-familiar. If one, just like in deity worship, one may be serving the deities every day, so he becomes over-familiar and he makes offenses by not taking proper care. So in the same way, one should not become over-familiar with one's Guru. If one doesn't see his Guru very often, then he'll tend always to be very respectful. But if he's, say, a personal servant, he's with him all the time, the tendency may be that after some time he'll start seeing him as an ordinary person. He may start to see faults. The Guru may give the kindness of being very familiar with him, maybe joke with him like this. But the disciple should be very careful to remember that they're always subordinate. Now, we've spoken a lot about juniors giving respect to superiors, but superiors also give respect to juniors. That is the tendency of a Vaishnava to always give respect to others. Srila Prabhupada, he always used to address his sannyasis as Maharaj. He would call him just like he would say, Jaipataka Maharaj. He wouldn't just call him Jaipataka. He would always refer to them as Maharaj. And his disciples, he would often, many times, he would refer to them, or even when he's speaking to them, he would call out, he would say to them, "Oh, Jagadish Prabhu." He would also address them as Prabhu, even though he's their Prabhu. But he would often address his disciples as Prabhu. And Gaur-Kishore Das Babaji, he always used to speak of Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur as my Prabhu, even though he was his Guru, and he was so humble like that. Srila Prabhupada often referred to even karmis, gross meat-eaters, as gentlemen. Just like Prabhupada, even when he was speaking many years later about his teachers at school, even though he knew that they were meat-eaters, they had the wrong philosophy of life, but he obviously had respect and affection for them, and that when he referred to them, that came out. One doctor in London did an operation on Prabhupada in 1977. Prabhupada referred to him as a gentleman. He considered him a gentleman. Maybe because he was a doctor and he had a respectable position. His behavior may have been very nice. Although in his general preaching in lectures, he would say, no one is a gentleman except he who is Krishna conscious. But in personal dealings, he was always very considerate and kind with people, unless their behavior was so bad that it merited otherwise, in which case he would deal with them appropriately. So superiors give respect to others, they're considerate to others, they don't abuse the respect that is given to them, they don't abuse their position. Abuse of position may be what? Abuse of position may be. This is a letter to Mukund Desai. Examples of abuse of position are if someone demands so many facilities, best food, demands so much service without proper Krishna conscious motive in demanding all these things, or a consideration for others, or reciprocation with them. It means someone may demand so much service, but he doesn't see that the person he's being given so much service, he doesn't have time to chant his rounds properly, is becoming exhausted. So one should be considerate also and reciprocate, not just demand service and then okay, go out, finish. But you should also reciprocate, give some mercy to them also. Because consideration for others will be dealt with in a separate section. Now, another misuse of position, I can give an example. That someone who was initiated by Prabhupada, he had abused his position in misappropriating some funds. And the temple president, who was not a disciple of Prabhupada, was checking him and investigating him. He was asking him about different things. He said, I'm a disciple of Srila Prabhupada. I'm on the same level as your guru. You can't talk to me like this. So that's double rascaldom. Already he's rascal, stealing from his guru's institution. And then he's claiming, what's that word? Immunity? He's claiming immunity on the basis of being a Prabhupada disciple. And saying that you can't say anything he's saying to someone, you can't say anything to me because I'm a Prabhupada disciple. So, of course, it may be true that he might prefer to be dealt with on such an issue, on such an issue by another disciple of Prabhupada, but he can't claim immunity like that. Now, a superior is supposed to accept respect from juniors, but he shouldn't have to remind juniors that, it's like a sannyasi, he shouldn't have to say, you should give some respect. And he won't like to, he will feel uncomfortable to do so. And generally he won't. He may not. He doesn't like to demand that respect. But if someone sees, for instance, that if someone else sees that someone is not giving proper respect to senior devotees, then he may check them. And he may explain to them, actually you're supposed to offer respect and this and that. So another junior man or senior man may say to that devotee or devotees who are not following the proper etiquette of dealing respectfully with a senior man, and just remind them you should do like this. Now, we've come into the area of discussion fallen superiors, or superiors who are not, if not fallen, but not acting very properly. The example is there in Shastra of Ashvatthama. He did the most abominable activity of cutting the head off of his father's disciples' sons. And he was punishable. But still, they didn't like to punish him. So they punished him mildly. It was a very difficult situation. They were perplexed what to do. Should we punish him or should we not? So eventually they came to a conclusion. Now, if someone, he may be for instance, he may be in a senior position in as much as he may be disciple of Prabhupada, but if he's blasphemous to the devotees or very critical unnecessarily, then we may just fold our hands and go away. That's it. We don't want to deal with such people. If someone, now this is a much more common situation, that for instance someone may be a Prabhupada disciple and he's also devotee, but he's not following very strictly. Someone who's in a senior position but he's not following very strictly means he may be living outside, hardly comes to the temple, gets up late every day, maybe he's not following all the regulated principles, or he may be living in the temple community or just on the edge of the community, but still he's not following very strictly. So still one should maintain respectful attitude towards him, one may not want to associate with him very much. Obviously, he'll be less respected than one who's following very strictly. Another point is that if someone who is in a very senior position acts in a sometimes they may act in a very humble manner, but that doesn't mean that one should treat them as if, they may act as if they're just someone who's very ordinary, but that doesn't mean that they should be treated as such, that you should engage them in some very menial service, for instance. Now, something which is very horrible is if you find someone who's very junior imitating a superior or acting as if he's on the same level. Just like for instance, someone, he may be not very senior devotee, but he engages other junior devotees in his own personal service. Sometimes I see this. Someone who's not a very senior devotee, but he calls someone, here, wash my cloth, like this. So this is not very good at all. Especially a god brother, he should never engage another god brother in his own personal service. There's a letter from Prabhupada in this respect, which will be, when the book comes, we can quote that letter. That's not the proper etiquette. If a god brother offers some service, generally one won't like to accept. But if he does, then he'll find some opportunity in future to do some personal service for him. Of course, naturally, sometimes one will serve the other. One will do something. He's going to one side of town. You can purchase something there for him. That's natural, mutual kind of dealing. But there's one story told at Radha Damodar temple. One day, one devotee cooked for another devotee. So Prabhupada said, then tomorrow you should cook for that devotee. You should reciprocate that service. Now, something which is almost laughable is if someone he imitates a senior devotee, just like Prabhupada had a certain way of walking, talking, very regal style. So if someone imitates that, that's ridiculous. Sometimes I've seen devotees, they chant, they like to imitate the way Prabhupada is chanting japa. But one should follow in the footsteps of great personalities, not imitate them. There are two different words. One is anusharan, which means to take shelter of, to follow in the footsteps. The other is anukaran, which means to imitate. So the two things are quite different. Now another thing, sometimes you find someone, he tells a lie so as to increase his prestige. He may say, oh, I'm a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, even if he's not. Especially we find someone whose guru has fallen down, and many times they say, I'm a disciple of Srila Prabhupada. Or they may not be initiated at all, and they say that. So, in one sense, everyone's disciple of Srila Prabhupada, but one shouldn't misrepresent himself as such. That is offensive, both in the matter of telling a lie to someone and putting oneself on the level of others who he's not. Or one may say, I'm 15 years in this movement, when actually he's only 10 years, like that. So that's unnecessarily trying to increase one's prestige. Now, general etiquette that a junior, he should not instruct a superior, but sometimes it becomes necessary. He sees the need for it. Just like someone, just to give an example, sometimes a Western devotee comes to India. He may be a very senior man, sannyasi, but he's acting in a way which might be considered normal in the West, but in India it might seem very strange. To give an example, if in Bengal you go swimming in a pond or in the Ganga, and you only have your kopyan on, or just a very, very short gamcha, then in Bengal, this is socially unacceptable, although it's acceptable in other parts of India, just like Vrindavan says. So, if if there's no one, if there's another senior man there, that you could ask him to say to that senior man. Or otherwise, very humbly, you may say, with folded hands, Maharaj, please, this is the situation. It's a difficult situation. Now, other situations may be in the temple. There may be some senior man who's regularly missing Mongolati, something like this. Junior man, he may call that to the attention of someone else, maybe temple president. Consult them first and let them do it, because anyway, it's very unlikely. Say if someone is a sannyasi, Prabhupada disciple, it's very unlikely that someone who's just initiated 1 or 2 years, even if he gives him good advice and tells him something, unless he's very humble, it's not very likely he's going to want to listen to what they have to say. That's just a matter. It's just a practical factor of psychology. Now, often we find in our society, you may find temple president is there, and other devotees are more years in the movement, the Prabhupada's disciples, or they're sannyasis. He's not any of these things. So, the temple president, he's supposed to organize everything. He's supposed to give direction and instruction. And how can he deal? So, anyway, temple president, Prabhupada disciples, sannyasis, they're all supposed to be advanced devotees. So, they should be able to work things out between them, how to work properly. One devotee told me that once Prabhupada made him the temple president when he was a very new devotee. There are many devotees who are very senior to him, almost all the devotees. So, how was he to engage him in service, which was his responsibility to do? He would simply go to all the devotees and with folded hands say, please Prabhu, could you do this service? He didn't try to force, but he took a very humble position. Anyway, the temple president, Prabhupada wrote in one letter, he has to maintain the discipline in the temple. And ultimately, he has to make the decisions about what to do about everything. He accepts the responsibility, so he has to do that. So sometimes he may have to take a strong position, even with senior devotees who are there. He may have to become strong with them, if necessary. Later on, when the matter is cleared, he may go and apologize and say, I'm sorry I have to act like that. But anyway, he has to maintain the discipline. That is his first responsibility. So, as we were saying, the whole thing is not just based on status, but also on affection. God-brotherly dealings should always be, as one letter of our dealings between God-brothers, and we can extend that in the modern context to God-brothers and all the devotees, should be very natural and pleasing. Otherwise, the future of our institution is not very bright. So we always say that in our Krishna conscious movement, everything is going on love and trust, with Krishna in the center. In Vaisnava society, dealings between devotees, as well as everything else, is based on the principle of samsiddhya haritoshana. The goal of life is to please Lord Krishna, to see that Krishna is satisfied. We've come together to live together in the society of devotees, to help each other serve Krishna and advance in Krishna consciousness. We should always remember this. In materialistic society, even though they have also some kind of culture, some kind of ways of dealing with each other, they can never have the love and good feeling that is shared between devotees. Because the basic principle of living together is that everyone is competing with each other for sense gratification. Everyone is envious of each other. So, just because they have to live with each other, they have some kind of culture, they have some kind of social dealings. But actually, they don't achieve actual proper good feelings between each other. Just like Bengal is, throughout this book, I'm going to be quoting examples of how in Bengal the culture is going on, because that's a good model for our Vaishnava culture. But actually, even though they have so much culture, practically the basic principle of life in Bengal is envy. This is, one book was made by some Christian missionaries, how to understand Bengali culture. And they said that the basic principle is envy. Everyone is, despite their polite social dealings, actually everyone's envious of everybody else. Also, I know in England, people, if they come from America, they think, oh, English people are so polite, because they always say, please, thank you, like this. But coming from England, I know that though they may say it, if you're American, you might not understand. But if you're English, you can understand that actually they may be saying thank you very much, but by the tone of their voice, you can understand they're saying, you're a jerk, get out of here. Someone may say, for instance, they may say, you may offer them a book on Krishna consciousness, and they will say, oh no, thank you very much. But by the time, they're saying it very politely, but by the tone of voice, they're saying that I reject you and everything you have to offer. I have no regard for you whatsoever. American nations are being very polite, but by the tone of voice, it's understood that he is not polite at all. So, another example is in Thailand. They have a very developed culture, but there's no Krishna conscious teachers to it. So they have their ways and means of expressing their displeasure. Even though they're never to a superior or a culture, they're not allowed to say anything to him. But we don't like you. But they have different ways of doing it. Just like an example, one book in Thai culture is written. An example that one man he was the manager in the office, and that day he had offended the workers because they wanted some request, and he refused it, so they felt offended. But they couldn't tell him directly. So every day he used to, when he was driving home, he used to drop off 3 of the office staff on the way home. He used to drop them off in his car. But one by one, on this day, in the evening, they got out of the car early and different excuses. Oh, I'm feeling a little sick. Oh, I forgot something. One by one they got out. And in this way, it was understood, without directly saying, it said, we don't want to be with you. You've offended us. So like that. Culture actually means culture. Outside of the Vaishnava culture, even the Vedic culture, it's like it's a Virat Sangha. We follow very nicely the Vedic culture. We're very, very respectful to Brahmanas. We always take them in charity whenever they want to. And we are the human, just as we are the Christian. So the point is, as this question is going to be Krishna. And if we do understand Krishna, then it will become something very nice. And if we don't, then we may practice culture in so many ways, but it won't be very nice at all. Now, Vaishnava culture, as the Vaishnava service is, it is not something very rigid and strict, but it's not static, but it is dynamic. Not everything is rigidly strict. Everyone is rigidly follow so many different principles. They are called matters. Even they simply read so many rules and regulations in the Smriti Shastra. And they are very much attached to the rules and regulations without understanding the point behind it. This is described by Vikasa in his Vikasa Niyama Agraha. When he is very eager to accept rules and regulations without understanding the point behind them, which is to love Krishna, to develop our love for Krishna, then he is caught on the path of Niyama Agraha. So, of course, there's another point. Niyama Agraha, which means not to accept the rules and regulations. So one should neither be overly enthusiastic to follow rules and regulations just for the sake of following them, nor to This is not following what he is doing. So you have to get the balance. That is something which something very liquid, which comes very naturally. The one who develops the an example of this, of how it's not very rigid and fixed, is the relationship between Narottam Das Thakur and Ramchandra Parivar. They were the closest of friends, and they used to live together and practice Krishna consciousness together as very close friends. But Ramchandra Parivar was the disciple of Narottam Das's godbrother. Narottam Das and Srinivasa Acharya, they were practically godbrothers, in as much as they had the same sixth Guru Goswami, and their gurus, their Dikshita gurus, Lokanath Goswami, and Gopal Bhattacharya, Goswami. So they were both, their gurus were both on the same level, they were practically godbrothers. But Ramchandra Parivar, he was the disciple of Srinivasa Acharya, but still he had a very friendly, intimate relationship in the Narottam Das. Now another point, Prabhupada, sometimes he described to his disciples, he used to refer to those godbrothers of his who were envious, which means almost all of them, as rascals. He told us, normally even if they are rascals, he wouldn't refer us to their disciples. But he did it to protect his disciples from their which was confusing something. They used to say to themselves, oh, why is he taking the name Prabhupada and not supposed to do that? And we're not following tiny little rules and regulations. What's this giving down on initiation to women, not in Shastra? We used to criticize Prabhupada in so many ways. So Prabhupada used to refer to them as rascals. But then, one time in Prabhupada's presence, one of Prabhupada's disciples referred to his Prabhupada as rascals. So Prabhupada immediately said, you can't say that. I can say that. You cannot say that. You have no right to say that. Another time, this is in America, there was one Indian bank clerk. There was one bank clerk, he was an Indian, and Prabhupada went to that bank for some business. They hadn't done some work they're supposed to do, and Prabhupada chastised him very strongly. Now, one devotee was with Prabhupada, Jyotiraj, and when they came out from the bank, Prabhupada said, I can speak to him like that, because I'm an old man who will accept it, but you cannot. He made this point about this other individual. Here in Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 4, Text 32, describes Prahlad Maharaj, the respectable person who was acted exactly like a menial servant, to the poor he was like a father, to his equals he was attached like a sympathetic brother, and he considered his teachers, spiritual masters, and older godbrothers to be as good as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 31. Like the super soul, he was kind to every living entity, and was the best friend of everyone. Another example of a senior looking after the senior even materially is given in Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila Chapter 25. Text 183, where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu tells Sanatana Goswami that all my devotees who go to Vrindavan are generally very poor. They each have nothing with them but a torn quilt and a small water pot. Therefore, Sanatana, you should give them shelter and maintain them. Another point about the status of women is that to a large extent their status is defined according to the status of their husband. For instance, the wife of the guru, wife of the king, they are respected in relationship to their husband, wife of the Brahmin, although
they may stand on their own with advancement also, especially in a society where spiritual advancement is honored. Just for example, Vaisnava Holiness Kakarani. They were not always family. They were respected as great Vaisnava leaders. A woman is very much respected for her main things she's respected for. Apart from the quality of spiritual advancement, is chastity. And of course, if she's spiritually advanced, automatically she is good. There are many stories in the Vedic literature of chaste women. Chaste woman is considered the ideal for a woman. As grounds on which to be respected, we can discuss a little bit about the position of the Brahmins in India, modern day India. Position is not very good. Almost all the members of the Brahmin caste are engaged in non-Brahminical activities. Very few, in terms of percentage, are engaged actually as temple priests or teachers. Of course, many of them may be teachers or professors of something totally mundane. Some of them, practically none, are independent. There may be some professional gurus like that who conduct guruship as a business. There are sadhus also, but mostly those families are dependent. That means there may be a pujari, but they get a wage for doing the pujari job. Now, of course, that's a lot to do with the whole breakdown of the caste system. There's no kings or landowners. Big landowners in modern India, people who used to sponsor criminal activities. Scholarship, that means study of Shastra, is struggling to survive. Previously there were many Shastra scholars, now very few. In Bengal, 99% are probably